So, hi Kabir, and welcome to the Sports Talk by Sports Paddock.
Hi, Sunaina. Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, welcome aboard. And so, just to give a brief introduction about you so that our viewers know a little more about you before we dive into our questions about you and your history. You are no stranger to the world of football, and you are a die-hard fan of the game as you are a follower, player, and a coach. You have a strong belief that football development can bridge the gap and between social and economic factors in society. You have been working in the sports development field for the past 7 years in India, and especially with projects related to grassroots. You are an AIFFD licensed coach, and you are currently working as the business head of South India for the company India on Track, right?
Yeah.
And during your tenure, like in India on Track, you won the first regional trophy at TCL, right?
Yeah.
The Community League.
Yeah.
So for the baby league, right?
Yeah. For the
And
baby league. Yeah.
that's one of the big feathers in your cap, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely dive into that a little more. So the first question that I'd like to ask you, since you are in this field, what in your experience makes you believe that football can be the bridge or the gap filler between social and economic gaps in our society?
Yeah. Sorry, Sunaina. A couple of things. One is the fact that it's been more than sort of 10 years of working in football
Wow.
development. And the other thing is I'm also a C license holder, my AFCC license as well. So in terms of, as you mentioned, sort of bridging the gap. So what I feel is that I've worked in multiple sort of development projects as such. So I started off with the Ozone and KNVB development project, which was, I think, the first of its kind in the city. We were extremely lucky. It was Ozone's CSR project at that point. We were working with the Dutch Football Federation, and that was just with basically sort of underprivileged is not the right word according to me, but slightly less economically fortunate people. So we were working with them. It was close to about 150 players that we
Wow.
then sort of brought down to about 30, 35 players. In terms of elimination by talent, it was only based on that completely. I went from that to Boca Juniors, which was India's, at least Bangalore's first proper paid program. I was lucky. Mr. Sunanal Das gave me the opportunity to pilot that program with him. Sort of created a few centers where we were able to create a proper structure for a pay and play program. In a year and a half, we went from 0 to 350 kids, which was
Wow.
yeah, for me it was a great experience. And then of course then moved on to IoT, where we worked with Arsenal soccer schools and now La Liga football schools. So I've been very lucky to sort of see a huge, like, a change across time, in terms of I went from, as I said, the less economically fortunate to the kids who could afford to go to Spain for
To
a
the big
year, for
schools.
example. Yeah, to spend a year in Spain just to play some football. Where I feel that football bridges that gap is when we're able to combine both of them. So right now in La Liga, we have scholarship programs for kids who can't afford it, and we bring both of those groups together. So that's where I see that it bridges the gap, because one, not only do the boys from the more uh,
Privileged.
sort of the privileged background sort of get to interact with kids who sort of live and die in that 90 minutes of playing the game. Like, I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
that is everything for them. Every training session is like their first and last training session. They're most excited throughout the entire period. So to have kids who've come from having everything, to see these guys who will scrap for literally anything, I think that sort of bridges a huge social gap in terms of a lot of these both stratas of society understanding each other. I think that has been
They're
the
coming as one and playing together as one with no
yeah. And
differences.
when they play in the team, or they're just training together, they get to know each other, they get to understand each other, what they come from, what they're doing, how they're doing it. And what's been great is to see the fact that I think the hard work aspect, or the mentality aspect from the slightly less economically fortunate, rubbing off on the more fortunate, and the other way around, where the more fortunate think better. For me, according to me, the education plays a huge role in the way sort of athletes think about the sport and what they're able to do, and that rubbing off on these kids. So it's been great to see that sort of that mashup happen, and
Wow.
I genuinely believe that is the future of the sport in terms of the players themselves are the best teachers. For me, according to me, the game is the best teacher, and the students themselves. As long as you just let them keep playing,
They'll
you will,
learn.
yeah, you will see so much sort of evolution happen in front of you. It's brilliant.
And this sort of module you got from the La Liga and NBA fraternity, which you implemented here as well?
Yeah, so basically the idea was that because I've been in both sides and I've seen it grow
That's
and
what.
stuff like, and we've then sort of had a conversation saying that, listen, in terms of trying to get the best out of the program, we have to do best of both worlds. So that's why we sort of created the scholarship program in both sports. So IoT run scholarship programs in both basketball as well as football. So that's NBA and La Liga as
La
well.
Liga.
So it's quite fantastic that way. And I think it's not just us. I think all the academies today in Bangalore do it in terms of all of them now have realized that I think that's one of the best ways to bridge the gap, not only technically, but also socially, as well as just a better understanding, to have a better group dynamic.
It's
Because
so true.
I think it's extremely required to have, you need to have your so-called extremely talented kids, and you need to have your very, very sort of hardworking kids. So, and this is the best way to get the mix of
How do
both.
you select the children? I mean, for the ones who come and pay and play for the paid program,
Yeah.
that's one. But how do you select the not so privileged
So I
kids?
mean, again, the advantage for me is that I've been around for 10 years covering Bangalore through and through. So there are pockets where we go and watch matches. There are sort of obviously school tournaments that we go to. There's basically tons. Anytime there's a football game, you will see one of us. There's a core team of 4 coaches. One of us will be there at the ground.
Okay.
Just to have a chat and see, okay, where these kids are coming from, what do they look, how do they play, what is their game sense, and then we go from there. The other thing is, the easiest is to reach out to coaches. The best part about the fraternity today is that everyone talks to everyone. And I think that's been a great sort of, it will be a great help for India in the future, that all of us coaches talk to each other a lot. I think I'm part of 9 WhatsApp groups, which is quite ridiculous. But but yeah, in terms of just the conversation, like, okay, did you see this happen? Did you see that happen?
So it's a well-connected group, basically.
Yeah, so everyone is well aware of what's going on, what types of players are out there, what kind of player you need. I mean, very importantly, I think it depends on the style of play, and all of that sort of comes down. So you then tend to choose players that you go from there. Yeah, you'd be surprised, actually, even at the youth level, it's extremely competitive. Coaches do want certain type of players. They want to try and play a certain way, which is quite good. It's really good. And I think there's, for every child out there is a coach that can sort of help them get better. So,
and actually, on the note of coach, I think you had also designed and helped manage the trainer program.
yeah, so
which is the first of its kind.
Yeah, we've done a few actually with La Liga. I've been extremely lucky that IoT and La Liga have done some fantastic sort of train the trainer programs, like helping coaches get better. Because while there is tournaments and games for the students to get better, so do the coaches. I'm not saying no, but I think just more concise information to age specific training, I think that was extremely important, and that La Liga did. So we did a couple of train the trainer programs nationally as well as locally for our own coaches. And in fact, during the pandemic, we did stuff online as well for everyone. We just opened it out and we were like, listen, whoever wants to join, it would be great. And we sort of worked that out. So basically, the idea was to mix La Liga's methodology as well as trying to understand age group training. For a lot of coaches, I think, that are going through the licenses, the idea is that a lot of them start with the fact that, yes, I want to be a professional coach, but you have to start somewhere. And my firm belief, and I have a couple of other coaches who believe the same, I think the higher license you go, the lower age group you should go. It doesn't happen that way, though. Everyone goes the other way around. But I do believe, I think
Why
the best.
do you think that?
Because I think if if I have a pro license coach, for example, if I have I'm going to give the example of a very close friend. If I have Richard Hood coaching under 10, under 8, I know for a fact tomorrow that age group is going to be technically extremely sound.
Because of his experience and professionalism.
Because of his experience and what he wants to bring to them. That's because at the end of the day, technique development in a country like ours, where football is not the main sport, should be our first priority. And without question. So, and I think the higher the license you go, the more understanding of the entire game you have. So that is what you need to be able to bring to the youngest age group. So today, for me, a C license coach, yes, it's great, all well and done. They teach you certain specific things to do, but you understand a person's body by the end of your A license. You understand the psychology of a player. You understand, the methods of the madness as such. So I truly believe the higher license you go, the lower age group you should go, because then you'll actually see a bigger difference. If you actually go to countries that are highly developed in terms of the sport, if you go to, say, for example, you go to Holland, you go to Germany, you go to Brazil, all of them, you will find, A license and pro license coaches at youth academies. Like I'm talking about 8, 10, 12, 14 age groups, because that's where you truly develop a player. You don't develop a player in professional football. You're managing a player in professional football. There's a huge difference. The development happens at a younger age group, and that needs to be done by, I would say, better prepared coaches. I'm not going to say better educated coaches.
But how do you suggest you implement it makes complete sense. It's very logical, but
yeah,
how does the federation imply this? Or how do you make people
So for
do
me, the idea is, this is something that I'm currently in talks with, hopefully, and I hope Satya sir sees this, and we've been having a conversation about this in terms of, like, whenever licenses happen in our state, for example, in Karnataka, if it happens, if there's an A license or a B license that happens, all those coaches, like how doctors do mandatory development post their MBBS, we should do post every course mandatory development. So you spend 2 months after you get your license working with, for example, a certain age group. You have to do it. You have to spend that much time and do it. That way, thereby creating, what you will do is that if a course happens every 6 months, you will have enough coaches doing 2 months of development in each age groups and in each area. That would thereby help other coaches who are teaching that age group. For example, I have right now, my under 10 is being managed by a D license coach, for example. I'm just giving you an example. Tomorrow, if I have 5 A license coaches who finish their course, or B license coaches who finish their course, are going to spend 2 months. They're going to spend 2 months with a D license coach, teaching him that, listen, these are the kind of things that you need to work on. This is what we're looking at when we're at the cusp of professional football. This is what we're looking at from a player. So can we start getting that right now? Do you know that the biggest issue today is that a lot of Indian kids don't even know how to run properly. I think like a lot of people don't even understand this. They're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, let's just play the game and everything will sort itself out. Yeah, it's great. Get as many people playing the game. Without a doubt.
Technically sound players also need to be...
Has to be there. You have to be able to create that. If you don't create that, what's the point of playing? Today I can play 60 games a year, and which doesn't happen, by the way, unfortunately, but it should get there. But if we do play 60 games a year, we will develop a player in a certain way, without a doubt. We don't even need to coach, to be very honest. But if we can do 60 games a year with kids who've been properly technically developed from the age of 4 to 10, that makes the biggest difference. Because then at the age of 13, 14, I'm not doing technique development. I am then doing game management. I am then doing tactical development.
And which is the mistake people are doing now. At 13, they're teaching them how to be technically.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing technique development at 13. In fact, even now at the under 17 league that's going on in Karnataka, it's some great football, no doubt. But the thing is, there are so many technical mistakes. You ask all the coaches, I don't think anyone would deny this. Even the team that's on top of the league, they say, I don't think I have the best technical players here. And that's the biggest difference. Like today, for me, the under 8 league that Karnataka is doing, what's going on right now, that's where everyone should be focusing on. Like work on the fact that can we get those kids to technically develop better? Because then when they reach the under 12, under 13 age category. It's not, I mean, yes, minor technical development, yes, but it should not be the main set. For us, the main thing right now is we're correcting basic technique, which way the body should be when they receive the ball, for example. You know, stuff like that at
Small
13,
things.
14. Yeah, exactly. 13, 14, when they're playing these kind of games, that shouldn't even be the, shouldn't be the topic of discussion. It should be the fact that, okay, technically, tactically, can I change the system? Can we play a 4-3-3 and convert it to a 4-5-1 at this age group? That's what it should be. That's where Holland, Germany, Brazil, Argentina, all of these countries are doing it at that age group.
And that's why they're producing such star players.
Exactly. That's why
they have, especially.
Yeah, they have players who are debuting for the national team at 16. The reason why they're able to do that is because they're technically sound, and the fact that they've been worked on tactically post that.
And also, it's the fact that they have a clear path and a guided road to get there.
Yeah.
In India, do you think that is still clear for players? Like, even if you pool in so many resources and time for those players at a young age, what's the guarantee that these players will actually stick with you to play for the state, for the country even?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you've nailed that tonight. I think the pathway needs to be sort of, I think, lit more. That's the best way to put it, like sort of tar the road a bit more. The idea has come. I think the fact that all, including Karnataka, I think we came fourth in some rating that they had for the states doing development, which is great, fantastic. Yes, but now can we push on from that? Can we add more wheels to the train? Can we set this up properly to get it moving in the right direction? Now we have 20 academies in Bangalore. Can we get them to play 40 games in a year? That's just home and away. That's all I'm saying. Can we do 38 games in a season? Just do that much. Do 10 months, 38, 40 games a season. Can we do that? Everyone plays everything around that. You base your training around that. Can we do that much for all age groups? Something as simple as that. Like, I loved the fact that the state federation came out and did this youth league now. Like, just post-pandemic, they've come up with a fantastic way to set it up. They've done it great. My only thing is, can we increase the number of games? Today, we have under 14 boys who are playing 6 games in one pool, 6 games in the other pool. Top 2 go through, and that's how it's going. Yeah. So I agree, and I understand the educational system in India is extremely hard. It's extremely tight. There are a lot of exams over time, but it's not like it's not the same anywhere else in the world. Everyone else's education system is probably similar. A lot of the kids today are doing IB and A levels, which is what everyone else is doing all over the world.
True.
So we can definitely find a way to fit it into the calendar. I think if we can get all students, girls and boys, playing football 10 months in the year, excusing 2 months for exams, holidays, all of that, 10 months in the year, if we can actually get them to play, you'll actually see a bigger difference in the under 15s, India under 15 team, India under 17 team, India under 19 team, and then overall to the main team. My entire idea is that it needs to start a lot younger.
But what do you think the other challenges are? Like, why aren't kids like balancing out both? I know now kids are like at least attempting to play a sport and get serious about it, but why aren't they staying? Like, what are the challenges you face, or what are the challenges the federations are facing that they're not implying or inculcating what you are suggesting?
See, the thing is, the biggest issue is that India doesn't, till now, the average Indian parent still doesn't see football as
a career.
Yeah, as an option of career. And I'm not talking about playing. I'm talking about anything. I've been extremely lucky that my parents have said, you know what, you chase what you need to chase at some point. If it doesn't work out, we can always figure it out. And I think hats off, first and foremost, I really have to say thank you to everyone in the coaching and sports development fraternity. I mean, a lot of people don't understand how hard it is. There are a lot of these guys who are on 18,000 rupees a month, but the effort that they put in, I'm talking about coaches who come in on salaries like that, who are putting in so much effort. Like, a lot of people don't even realize it. You can do a Swiggy delivery job and you can make more money than that. But these guys choose to remain coaches. And I think a lot of people don't realize the effort, time it takes, the emotional investment, because I mean, whatever said and done, you're putting yourself through a lot of that to ensure that this happens. So for me, once India starts realizing that there are multiple sports, the fact that there is an option to have career. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not even talking about playing, but you can have a career in football. You can become a football analyst, a coach, a physio, the head of analytics. I mean, Sports Paddock's doing a ton load of work in sports analytics. I mean, stuff like that. Like 5 years ago, we wouldn't have seen these kind of jobs. Now we have them, but we still have a huge number of people who don't believe that it's an even possibility to happen. And then a lot of them believe that it happens only after degree, which is then too late. You know, like in the sense that parents then agree, okay, you know what, you've done all of this.
Option.
Yeah.
You've been playing all your life. You can still try.
Yeah.
I think that's how all of us have done this.
Exactly. Now you can try. So the thing is, for me, what I would urge is the fact that I would like that parents look at it as a viable option. The other thing is, of course, I think a lot more money needs to be poured in. We have to find sponsors for youth football, for youth sport overall, not just football, football, basketball, all of these. There has to be more money put in terms of just infrastructure, in terms of showing a pathway. Infrastructure is definitely getting better in India in bits and pieces, but like just overall pathway. I'm not talking about cash prize for youth tournaments. I don't think that's the right way.
That's not the right incentive to.
Yeah, that's not the right incentive. But what I'm saying is spend more money in terms of making sure that it works within the calendar. Can we do it? Can we have it at a 11-a-side facility on Friday nights? Because they're done with the school week at that point. Then can we play the game Friday night? Then, you know, they go back to school on Monday morning, so there's no problem.
Correct.
Because the thing is, the biggest issue is Sunday nights. For example, Sunday evenings poses a very unique situation. A lot of parents, especially if it's after 6, they're like, oh yeah, sir, you know, practice, maybe not, because these guys need to eat, sleep, and then get up for Monday school. And I completely understand it. You don't want first day of the week where the kid goes, you know, completely tired. Yeah, exactly. Tired. So the thing is, stuff like that, like basic, extremely basic, spend more money in terms of ensuring that stuff like this can happen. The biggest thing is to spend more money to ensure that the leagues happen. I think a lot of people don't understand that for a league to happen, you require X amount of money to ensure that the league can happen. And I think we need to have leagues. It's as simple as that.
More playing opportunities, basically, for the kids.
That's it. I think the only coaches will develop the entire ecosystem around it. Physios will get better. Sports doctors will get better the more we play matches, because then you experience a lot more. And I think that's the biggest thing. India has, and it's very strange that I say this, but India has this very sort of tuition mentality. Let's just learn. You know, because the thing is, when we started, to be very honest, when I started Boca Juniors as well, when I worked with Mr. Sunanda Das, he has a fantastic vision with what he wants to do with football development and stuff like that. But we were in discussion and we were like, okay, let's wait and see when the first parents ask us for a match. Like, you know, we'll continue doing our training, and we were setting it up anyway. We were setting up a structure to start matches and all of that.
Okay.
But we were like, in terms of just reciprocation, let's see when the first question of a parent will arise that, okay, sir, you've trained enough. When's the first match? And you'd be surprised to know that for the first 6 months, no one even asked.
Really?
No one asked. I mean, we played internal games and all matches during training, but I'm saying a proper game, referees,
competitive.
Yeah, match. Like stop, just play a match. 6 months, we didn't have a single question.
Why is that though?
That's what I'm saying. It's the tuition mentality. It's the fact that I think India believes that, yes, we need to learn. But okay, when are you going to put the learning into practice? I think that's where the huge gap lies. Yeah, it's a massive, massive gap. Today, if you look at it, in all coaching, I'm not talking about just ours. I'm not talking about just football. If you go to badminton coaching, for example, today, and find out how many times in a month do those kids who train twice a week play a match, you'd be surprised to know that they don't. Maybe once in 3 months, they'll play a game. Because again, everyone correlates the number of training hours you have to a match. They're like, have they learned enough? I mean, how do you know if they've even learned from the first session?
It's more like quantity rather than quality.
Exactly. It's the fact that they're like, how much have they learned to put into the match? For me today, with what I'm doing with the under 14 team, I've given them 2 instructions for the entire league. That's it. My
Two
entire
instructions?
my entire coaching is based on 2 things. One is that I want us to try and be comfortable on the ball. That was one. And 2 was I wanted my backline to push up. Those were my 2 instructions. That's it. Because the thing is for me today is like, if I complicate it more than that, I'm not even going to achieve these 2. Can I achieve just the basic 2, which is probably what I would have done in my first tactical session with my kids? Can I achieve that much over a 6-game period? Can my under 14 boys do that much? For me, that is then progression. Then I can go to the next topic. I'm not going to do 20 topics and then see every single one of them fail in front of me. Because, I mean, they're kids.
I mean, there's only a certain amount they can grasp at one time, right?
Exactly. And they're also, a lot of these kids are experiencing proper competitive football for the first time. So how much can I burden them with? You know, I can do 20, 30 things during a training session. And when I started coaching, to be very honest, I did in a 2-hour session when we did, I would do 18 to 19 drills. And then I realized, I was like, I'm just overburdening my students. In that 18 to 20 drills, they haven't even learned one properly. So then obviously I started, chopping it down.
Simplifying it.
Yeah. And now it's just, I do basically 3 drills every session. Because at the end of every session, I want my student to go away saying that I learned something. Because that's progression. For me, it's not how much I know, it's how much I can teach them. How much will they learn?
And they also have to enjoy it, right? I mean,
Exactly.
That's why they'll come back and they'll continue it.
Exactly. And see, the thing is, that's what you have to understand. So there's a mixed mentality in everything here today. It's the understanding that a parent who's sitting there sees his kid doing, for example, just 3 things the entire session. He'll come to me and say, sir, was that exciting? Like, I don't know if it was up there. Was it entertaining enough?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you watch next session and you see your son implement what he did the previous session. For me, that's a success.
And I think you also, as a coach, will have to train or sort of teach the parents also to have this understanding and this sort of mentality.
That is the biggest, I think for me, that is the biggest pathway next. It's the education of the parent. While the players are getting educated on the ground, I think the biggest thing is to educate a parent on what is going on. You have multiple types of parents, and I mean this in the best way possible to all the parents that are going to be sort of watching this, where you have parents who are so invested in watching every single minute of their child play. It's fantastic. It's great. Because then where the child gets his hunger from or she gets her hunger from. But the other thing is also let the child learn. Forget letting the coach teach. Let the child learn. For me, the biggest thing is just they will understand so much more because they are on the ground. They see 20 other things that we can't even see when we're standing on the sideline. We don't even process that. We think, okay, this is our pattern. This is what we need to do. This is how it needs to be done. But you have to understand the best part about sport is its expression. It's that at that given point in time, can that child express themselves? Can you let them be fully free and express themselves?
That's so true.
I've got so much stick from one of my colleagues in terms of, he's like, listen, man, you're down 10-0 in this game. Change something so it changes. And I'm like, I don't want to, because I want my students to be able to score the game. And there are only 2 things. I mean, in development today, you have to be very clear. Do you want to develop do you want to win or do you want to develop? I'm not saying that you can't do both. You can definitely do both. And there are some fantastic coaches who managed to bridge that gap and do both.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it is each game, can my student learn? That's it. The scoreboard is secondary. At the end of the day, today, if Vedant can be a better player from game 1 to game 2, I've done my job as a coach. That is my understanding. So when I have people come and question me saying, sir, at some point, stop it. When you're really getting hammered, why are you still not putting 6, 8 students behind the ball and stopping? I'm like, I can do that. And maybe the game will end at 11-0 instead of 17-0. But we've still lost, right? I mean,
Might
it
as well make it
doesn't.
a learning rather than.
Exactly. So for me in that, why stop what you're trying to do? Continue to try and do what you're doing. Because even if you achieve one goal in that, the kids then believe that, yes, sir, the system works. Whether the result came or not, doesn't matter. They understand that the system then works. That's what they need to believe in. Because for me, at the end of the day, the responsibility should lie on the student to play the game. The coach is just there to help. He's not there to run everything, or she's not there to run everything. The coach is there to help out, but the student is the one that plays the game. Let them play.
That's so true. I mean, and you as a coach, I'm sure will have many challenges of your own. I mean, what are the challenges you face? I mean, apart from outside the field, even on field, what are the challenges that you've faced being a coach?
So the thing is, there've been multiple. Of course, I think the beauty of it, as well as the challenge of it, is the fact that you have multiple personalities. Each of these kids are so different in so many ways. You know, you'll find very analytical kids, like who see things very black and white. You'll find other kids who don't even have a concept of time. You know, like they'll just play because they enjoy playing. They'll probably lose track of time. There are other kids who are very sort of meticulous in the way they, you know, spend their body energy, like how much they run. They'll control all of that. You'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah, you'll be surprised. You'll actually see a 10-year-old who understands that he has to conserve his energy. Like I've been shocked, like because there are a couple of drills where you go and everyone's supposed to just go up and down. The entire idea of the drill is, can you understand what transition
Endurance.
is?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and transition in the game. And you'll see a couple of these kids who understand what's going on, and they lay back a little bit. And I'm like, why are you staying back? And they're like, no, sir, I know the drill's going to go on for 6 more minutes. I know when in 3 more minutes, these 2 players are going to be tired. That's where the space is going to be. And I'm like, at 10, if you can understand that much, I mean, I don't have to do anything, just enjoy what you're doing.
Wow.
But you also have kids who have sort of, obviously, learning difficulty is a big thing. And I think sport can definitely help sort of overcome that. It's something that's extremely close to my heart in terms of ensuring that sport does that. I mean, sport has done so much for me. So I'm sort of dyslexic, so and I understand what it means to have some sort of challenge in life in terms of something that you can't help. And, you know, as much as you try, you can't do anything about it. And I can see students struggle with that on a day-to-day basis.
And you can sort of relate to them.
Exactly. But the thing is, for me, sport just nullifies a learning disability, because at the end of the day, if I can run, I can play any sport. Can I do that much? Even, and I'm not saying that the kids who can't run can't play a sport. I mean, I've been lucky enough where with IoT, I got to interview some wheelchair tennis players, and I realized what they go through. Like we've done some work for Roland Garros and stuff like that. Yeah, wow. Roland Garros have a wheelchair tennis tournament. And India's actually sent, Bangalore, in fact, has sent 2 players from here for the Roland Garros tournament. It's been fantastic. So to realize what they can do, forget a learning disability, if they can overcome a hugely physical disability, I mean, sport can do anything. So for me, at the end of the day, I think it's a challenge personally is to help people grow. But challenge externally, what I've seen is the fact that there is a multitude of children, multitude of people, multitude of parents. The biggest thing I think coaching has taught me is to be patient. Because if you ask my parents, I was a very angry and very quick-tempered child while growing up. And I mean, I don't think it's changed. If you ask my students, they'll be like, sir's always angry, but I'm only angry. I mean, I get angry in terms of, angry is not the right word. I get frustrated because I know they can do so much better.
Comes from a place of passion and love, I guess.
Yeah. And it comes from the fact that I know they can do so much better. I mean, they deserve to push themselves a little bit more because they can be that good. I mean, I've had a question from a 21-year-old who called me, said, sir, can we do coaching with you? And I said, unfortunately, we do only grassroots training, but I can put you across to someone. And then he said, sir, do I have a chance to become a professional footballer? And I was like, listen, I'm going to be truthful to you because I owe you that much. Don't ever stop trying, but it is late. I'm going to be very truthful and say it's late, but I don't think you should ever stop trying. If that's your dream, please go ahead and try it.
Wow.
Like, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be 30 something and say, you know what, I wish I tried.
No regrets, basically.
Yeah. Like, I mean, try it, man. You never know. Today you can play at 21. If you play B Division Bangalore tomorrow, if Richard sees you, signs you for Bengaluru United, they're playing I-League 2. From I-League 2, if someone spots you and you get into ISL at 24, what's the problem? I mean, there's no saying that you can't do it.
Nothing's impossible, basically.
Exactly. The idea is that try as much as you can because you owe yourself that much. I think that's the one thing that you owe yourself is to try. Because I know if you can't get it, and this is something that comes very deep from me. I know I haven't been able to accomplish certain things. I wish I could have changed certain things. But it's the fact that I'm not going to stop trying. So I tried when I was 19. That time AIFF didn't have the D license.
Okay.
It was only the AFC license. I remember I went to the state association at that time and I said, I want to do my C license. And the guy looks at me, he's like, sir, you're 19 years old, just continue playing. And I said, no, I'm adamant because I know that is where I want to be. And unfortunately, at that point, they said, listen, the criteria at that point of choosing was very, very different. And they said, okay, we'll take your name down. Whenever the opportunity comes, we'll let you know. And 19 went by, 20 went by, 21 went by.
Really? Oh my God.
24 was when I got the first call. And credit to the state association, they actually remembered and they called me back, which was fantastic because I think my name was just repeating in every list. So I would go every time and say, sir, can I try now? Sir, can I try now? Sir, can I try now? So I think they finally gave my chance at 24. It's when I actually failed the first C license that I understood that I was like, hey, you know what? It might look easy watching the TV and seeing your heroes do it on the side, but it's a lot harder than it looks. And I failed that exam, and then that's when I realized I was like, I need to buckle down and actually figure this out. It's not just going to be something that's easy. And that was actually the start of my entire coaching career when I failed that exam. I was lucky enough that the KNVB were then doing the project that they were doing. I went there for 3 months. We just basically learned the absolute basis of coaching from the Dutch Football Federation. Then they actually had an exam. There were 24 of us who did the 3-month coaching. 3 of us were asked to come back and coach.
Wow.
With them. So I was extremely happy with that. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, it was more of a personal thing. I was like, you know what? Okay, AFC didn't give me, but these guys gave it to me, that sort of thing. But then I learned over time that the reason why I didn't get it at that point was I was probably not ready. And sort of I post that whenever the D license came about, I went and did it in Bombay. Then I came back and then continued coaching. And then I've managed to do my C. Hopefully within the next 4 months, I will do my B as well.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the thing is
keep learning.
Yeah. The certification, to be very honest, doesn't matter. Just going to the course teaches you so much. You get to interact with fantastic instructors. 2 is that you also get to meet 23 other coaches. Just sitting with those guys and, having a chat about football, about how they perceive the game, you learn so much more. I think it's fantastic that way. I've been lucky enough. That's what I said. I think a lot of the just interactions with other coaches teaches you so much in terms of mentality, in terms of understanding the game, in terms of seeing it slightly differently. Because while football is, all sport, not just football, all sport has been, as I mentioned before, expression. You want it to be, as much as you want it to be self-expression, you can learn so much from everyone else's expression of the sport. And I think
that's the beauty of a team game as well, right?
Yeah, team game, even individual games. Like for me, I'm a sucker for any sport that's on TV. So I'd watch from table tennis to fencing to anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So like for me, I learn a lot from tennis as well in terms of tennis training regimes, tennis mentality coaching. There's a ton load of tennis players who get sports psychologists when they're 14, 15. The reason for that is that
it's an individual sport. There's no one there helping them during the game. Yeah.
And tennis has a very, very, like if you look at badminton, between games, the badminton players can talk to their coaches. Tennis, you're not
You can't.
allowed once the game starts.
It's
So the
you,
thing
you
is,
and yourself. Yeah.
exactly. So there's so much to learn from those guys, from from both sides of the players, from the coaching staff. Tennis also, if you notice over time, has been always such a family oriented sport. Like you'll have either the uncle who's a coach or a mentor, you'll have either the uncle or the father or the aunt. They're all they're all part of.
Oh, I didn't recognize this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you like, I mean, Nadal's the biggest example. Djokovic also had his dad in the beginning. Nadal's uncle was his coach and mentor for the longest time. And it's surprising because it's the one thing that I feel in a team sport can't work. Like you can't have someone, I mean, not that you can't, again, can't is the wrong word to use, but like, I don't think it's a family oriented sort of situation where you could have a father and son coaching together. It'll be great if that ever happens, but I'm just saying, I think that the difference in self-expression is so much that, especially with a personal relationship that's that close, it could explode into something else. But with tennis, you see it work beautifully. So, you take as many things as you can from multiple sports. Like, for example, since I gave you the example of fencing, fencing is points based. I have a friend of mine, very close friend of mine, who's also a fencer. Mm-hmm. He fenced in Colombia, and just the understanding of, he's like, while it's points based, it's also how you can inflict that point. Are you willing to get hit to get that point out of the other player? Are you willing to risk it for example, if the score is 8-7, are you willing for it to go 9-8? Where you will sacrifice one and take one.
Wow.
So the mentality of that is fantastic to see. There's another sport that I draw so much from is also golf, because I mean, golf for that example is the best way of self-expression. There's not a single golf swing that's the same. Not a single one. You have players like Tom Daley to Tiger Woods to Rory McIlroy. All three of them have starkly different sort of golf swings, but they can have identical scores.
But it's a matter of their own expression, which gets them those points.
It's the easiest way to play the game. And golf has so many other things involved. Every single element in golf makes the difference. What part of the grass you're on, how much wind is there, where the trees are, where the sand is. It makes such a huge difference. So for me, I think the idea is just trying to see where you can pick up what to become a better inspiration for the people that you coach. So I use examples from everywhere. For me, again, like Ali, Tyson, Holyfield are three huge examples that I use for kids, because in terms of just the training, their mentality during training, like Evander Holyfield and Muhammad Ali would shut themselves off to the world for 3 months before a fight.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Of course, over time, things got different with Ali. He became so popular that the press wanted to follow even his training regime. But if you notice that, he had a big mouth, but at most times he would try not to talk to the press. It's when he was egged on that he would talk to the press. But otherwise, he was so tunnel vision. It's fantastic to see. So can I use that and implement it on my kids? Can I get that? Can I get them to understand what tunnel vision means during the league? Can you not be bothered by anything else? Can you not let something affect you?
I think this is something a coach is really needed for, like sort of educating the kids skill-wise and mentally. Yeah. Because, I mean, both of them play a very important role, whether it's an individual sport or a team sport. But I think you guys, along with parents, of course, have a very important role to sort of mentally train the kid in a good way and a bad way, because kids will have good days and will have very bad days.
Exactly.
But the coach is the one who will actually bring them back to speed based on their mental training.
Yeah,
so I think you guys have a big thing over there.
As you said, I think what a lot of people need to understand is that children, more than anyone else, youth development kids that are going through academies and process, they will have good and bad days. Understand that much. you're never going to, I mean, even we have right now today, everyone in the world will have good and bad days.
Of course.
There's no way you can be perfect, but as a team you can.
Yeah.
As a team you can, because someone's deficiencies can be
Can be
someone
your
else's
strength.
strengths. And can you help negate that? Can you understand your teammate's deficiency and say, sir, I can stand up and help him in this part, or I can stand up and do this for her? Can we do that? As a unit, can we be perfect? I think that's the most important.
Wow. And I think that's a beautiful thing to say. Kabir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, you got stuck for a second.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a beautiful way to sort of look at sports in general, for grassroots especially. And I want to know also one thing before we wrap up. What is your goal in the year 2021? I mean, you've told me so many things that you have planned out in a spread, but what's your main goal for 2021? Whether it's a baby step or at the end, like December end.
Yeah.
What is your goal?
For me, it would be to genuinely hope that one is that if everything works out with the state association, is to ensure that we play more games. I think that's the biggest goal for 2021 is just to play more games. And on a very personal level, of course, it's to learn more and keep learning. I think that's the biggest goal individually. But overall, I think the biggest thing is just to play more games.
Play more games. Wow.
Yeah. Like any sport. I mean, I'll play anything and everything just to get an understanding of what's happening.
Wow.
So just play more games. To anyone and everyone that's out there, in terms of, it doesn't even matter how old you are, just play more games. I think that should be the mantra for 2021.
Especially making up for last year, since no one got to play anything.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it should be double the effort to ensure that we play more games. Any sport that it is, please ensure that you play more games, and hopefully it will happen.
And I just want to ask one last question before we wrap this up. Can you tell me one most memorable moment in your career? It's going to be a tough one, but try.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple. If you'll indulge me. So one is the fact that I think Mr. Sunanda Das gave me the option. I mean, of course, first I think would be the fact that clearing the KNVB's very, very strenuous coaching program. I think that was definitely a highlight. Two was obviously given the opportunity by Sunanda Das to run what I would have believed at that point was probably the best oiled machine in terms of a pay and play program. I think we were it was, I mean, granted, and Sir knows this more than anyone. I think he worked as harder than anyone amongst us, but we did a lot of work in that year and a half that I think has now paid such great dividends. So for me, that, while it's always, once you leave, like I was telling Sir, it's always a joy to try and beat Boca Juniors when I play them again. But it's the fact that it gives me immense pleasure to see what we were able to do. So that moment of joining hands with him and sort of, seeing his vision with him was great. And I think thirdly, the biggest one is with the entire IoT team, sort of to mention Vivek Sethia, Rohan, Rashim, and Gaurav Modwell. I think all four of them, just to have a pan-India vision of a pay and play setup that would go across multiple sports was a huge highlight for me. I think when it happened, it was the idea that, in fact, I sat with Vivek. I still remember this. We were at UB City for Freddie Lundberg, I think, had come down to do like a jersey, the jersey unveiling for Arsenal. Mm-hmm. They were doing a worldwide launch, and he was here, and he was just talking to me about the vision for IoT, and I was completely blown away. I was like, man, to be able to see that much is just fantastic. And I think that was one of my highlights, to say, you know what, I will join them and try and be able to put their vision to fruition in the real world. It would have been great. And it's been great. I mean, 6.5 years, we've managed multiple sports. We've managed the fact that we've done regional and national camps. I've been lucky enough where I've taken kids to Portugal for months of training. Wow. With Estoril. I've sent a few kids on scholarship programs to Spain. So, I mean, for me, that the highlight, the three biggest highlights for me is I think in my coaching aspects would be the fact that when I cleared that the KNVB program, the signing with Sunanda Das, and the signing with IoT Vivek
IoT.
and company.
Wow.
But on an extremely sort of like just a coach level, if I had to look at it, it was when we won the TCL, and it's not because we won the TCL. It's the fact
how
that
we won it.
Yeah, it's how the boys played. It was, I mean, it was, I think, an 18-game season. We were undefeated for 17. We lost our last game, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think I put too much pressure on the boys for the last game. I do apologize to the boys and the parents for that. It meant so much to me. For me, I mean, I've grown up being an Arsenal fan. I know I'll get a lot of stick.
Oh, so you replicated Arsenal's winning streak also.
I was hoping because for me, Arsene Wenger and Marcelo Bielsa are the two, like, for me, I hold them at highest degree in terms of learning. Because again, they are people like Wenger has a degree in economics, and he was able to do what he did in football. It's just unbelievable. So for me, when we were at the 18th game, I remember telling the boys, I said, listen, I used the same analogy I gave you. I said, you know, none of us have had a perfect time till now, but as a team, we've been perfect. We haven't lost a single game. So let's try and just finish the season the same way.
Wow.
And unfortunately, we got hammered that game. I think we lost 6-2 or something like that. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest, but the fact that we won the league, the way we did it, I think, in terms of the more than anything, for not even just the results. I think the way the boys played and the enjoyment and excitement that I saw it bring them was just
fantastic. It brought a lot of excitement, happiness for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying it. Listen, winning gives you a very different type of thrill and enjoyment that nothing else can. But it's also, I think, what they enjoyed so much was the way they were able to win. I think the fact that all of them were involved in each and every goal, each and every win. It was not a single one of those players who felt like, sir, I didn't contribute. It's the fact that all of them felt that they contributed, and that was most important to me. And I think within that, the highlight for me was the fact that in that game that we lost 6-2, my goalkeeper won't appreciate me saying the story, but Samant, you know, I mean the best for you. So we played the ball back. The entire thing was that we would keep the ball, we would wait for the gaps and then move forward with it. So there was a back pass that went under his foot and we conceded.
Poor thing.
Yeah. And for me, the biggest highlight was we conceded 2 goals like that. But the greatest highlight of that was that he tried again. He asked for the ball again. And for me, that at the end of the day is better than any other trophy, to be honest. It's the fact that he had the courage
to try again.
To say, listen, let's do it again, because that's the way we play. You know, forget the result. We're going to keep doing this because we know this works. We believe in this. We believe in each other. And I think more than him, also credit goes to the rest of the team for even playing that ball back. Because you're thinking at 12 years old, man, we've conceded 2 goals the same way. We're losing the one game that we shouldn't be losing because, I mean, Sir gave this very emotional speech before the game.
So sweet.
But the fact that they tried it again without a shadow of a doubt made me feel that there we go. That for me is the takeaway. I don't like the result. I'm forever going to remember the result, but it doesn't. I remember the result because of this, because that even in a low point at that point where he's conceded 2 the exact same way, he still had the courage to say, listen, let's go again because this will work and we will score. And for me, that was probably personally the biggest highlight would be that. Yeah.
I think that's something even I will remember, like how you guys won, because that's something that everyone should know. And I think your team, if they ever get to see this video, like till the end, they'll all be smiling towards the end, especially the keeper. Like, I think he'll be like all smiles at the end for what he did, no matter what the results are. And I think you've done extremely proud for them being their coach. And I think they're really happy about this, because we in India need coaches like you who are not just talented and certified, but passionate about it.
Thank you. It means a lot. It does. It really does. It sort of helps. It helps push us through on the hard days when the boys don't listen on the field.
I'm sure that's what you all have. We all have our good days and our bad days. But I'm extremely impressed. Like, apart from your bio, I think you as a person don't showcase yourself as just a coach, but a sports fanatic, like as such. Like I can feel the vibe through this video call, and I am absolutely amazed. And I hope it spreads through all the kids, and I hope kids actually are inspired by what you do.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. Thank you so much, Sunanya.
Yeah, and thank you for giving us your time. We look forward to having more such interviews, and keep learning, keep shooting high, and we'll get back again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank Sports Paddock as well. It's been a great experience. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks, Kabir. You take care.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.